coming to you from the Hudson Media Group studio. This is Talking Politics, and I am New Jersey's premier award-winning journalist, top 100 Latino Via the Latino Spirit online magazine, certainly the weapon of mass disruption in Garden State media, and of course, the people's choice and the people's voice. Yes, it is me, Fernando Uribe. Hoping you'll have a wonderful Valentine's week as we approach President's Day weekend. Certainly one of my favorite holidays of the year, certainly honoring our great American presidents, starting with the father of our republic, George Washington, of course, my favorite American president, Abraham Lincoln. So, of course, in advance, hope you have a wonderful President's Day weekend. Do party responsibly and enjoy it with friends and family. Of course, here, folks, there's always a lot to discuss, so let's get started. Here's what I'm thinking about right now. And folks, it's always interesting to me whether it is current legislators at the federal level or at the state level or even former ones that always seem to, I guess, maybe have an opinion in this political climate. And an editorial I came across in the Jersey Journal from former state assemblywoman Joan Quigley got my attention, but more importantly because I think it's just blatantly dishonest. But I'll explain why. Now, certainly Joan starts the editorial by saying whether or not you have kids in public school, you may be alarmed by the first of Donald Trump's policy proposals, which, by the way, he's not president anymore. But again, it seems like for the left, or many of those who identify as either Democrats or progressives or center left or woke, it just seems like the 45th president lives rent-free in so many people's heads. And of course, issued as he strives to regain the White House next year. If enacted, they thoroughly change the way children learn, teachers teach, and schools get equal funding. There'd be fewer teachers too, and plenty more fights at school board meetings. We'll get more on that later. And oh yeah, your local taxes will probably go up as well. Well, that's a little dishonest by Joan, but we'll get to that as well. That's because Trump wants to cut federal funding for any school or program that includes critical race theory, gender ideology, or what he calls, quote, inappropriate racial, sexual, or political content into our children. You know, if federal funding goes down, state and local taxes must go up to support education, the most expensive item in any state budget. She's right on that. Trump would also open civil rights investigations into any school district that engages in race-based discrimination, especially against Asian Americans, and vows to keep men out of women's sports. Joan, I have to stop you right there. Why you object to a lot of these things kind of boggles my mind. And let's start, let me just go from last to first here. Now, you're a woman, right? Now, I take it from having seen your social media and some of the stands that you've taken politically over the years, I would think that you're probably a feminist. Well, why is it that men like me are the only ones sticking up for women, for girls in athletics? Now, I'm as big a sports fan as you'll ever know. Follow me on social media, you can totally tell that. But when I want to look at sports and look at it objectively and look at it from sort of a pure perspective, right, sort of like a classical point of view, I mean, men should play with men and women should play with women. This idea about being woke and the idea that, oh, we should demonize anyone that dares to challenge or criticize, you know, biological boys playing with biological girls in the name of wokeness or in the name of inclusion and equality is absolute nonsense, Joan. You're better than that. You've been around the block politically way too long to make such a ridiculous statement. Now, I get it. You want to cater to certain woke activists, but again, that comprises a small percentage of the voting electorate, whether it be in Hudson County, New Jersey, or the nation. Okay? The idea that you feel the need to sort of acquiesce to 1% of the population out of 425 million people is sort of mind-boggling, Joan. But again, I'm the only one really in journalism sticking up for girls. If I had a daughter and she's playing, let's just say high school basketball, and she's a junior, she sets every district or conference record possible, and she goes into her senior year, hopefully maybe being scouted by colleges and universities, and a biological boy joins the team and breaks all my daughter's records, I'm going to tell you something right now, I'd be at the school board raising hell. And let's be honest, Joan, so would you. So stop with the nonsense. Let's move on here. Certainly going on about what's inappropriate racial, sexual, or political content into our children. Joan, again, I don't know what school district you sent your kids to or where you live, but in Hudson County predominantly, I think teachers do a very good job of keeping political content out of the classroom, per se. Now, do we have activist public sector unions like the NJEA with, you know, Black Lives Matter weeks? I mean, again, I don't care for, you know, by large mansions, because that's really what BLM stands for. Now, again, if you want to go on record and say that you think that it's okay to advocate for Marxist and socialist teachings, which is what all BLM is about, and you think that's okay in the classroom, then come out and say that. But don't hide behind this veil of, oh, well, you know, let's just whistleblow here, or, you know, I don't know, virtue signal like you're doing. Let's go along with inappropriate racial or sexual. Well, what do you consider inappropriate sexually in the classroom? Should 5-year-olds be learning about sodomy? Should 5-year-olds be learning about, I don't know, transgenderism? I would venture to guess, Joan, when you had children and they were that age, that you probably would object to that too. Don't be sanctimonious now because you want to cater to, again, a woke percentage of the electorate, whether it be in Hudson County or former supporters. Okay, it just sort of boggles my mind that, you've been in the legislature. You understand that these policy prescriptions don't work. Okay, the idea of, I don't know, making sure that drag shows that are taxpayer funded and somehow that's a good thing. Listen, if parents want to take their kids to a drag show, I question their sanity. But if they want to do that on their own time, again, they're parents. They're going to do what they want with their children. But the idea of having drag shows on school premises, that's just madness, Joan. You're better than that. To sort of paint the picture that you're sort of championing that cause, I think is downright scary. But let's move on for the rest of this column, which I think was really hysterical by you. All right. So, for example, talking about, again, going after the president, saying that, quote, personnel is policy. And at the end of the day, if we have pink-haired communists teaching our kids, we have a major problem. He intends to solve that, quote, problem by calling for special certification for teachers who embrace patriotic values, and he will give, quote, funding preferences and favorable treatment to states and school districts that abolish teacher tenure. As if abolishing tenure is enough, he demands school principals be elected, not appointed. Now, listen, Joan, again, I think if you learn anything about the 45th president, there's a lot that he says for clickbait. There's a lot he says for traffic, for views. Again, that's what we've come to learn about the 45th president. There's a lot I've always liked about Donald Trump. I don't always like his bombastic nature. I may always like how inflammatory he is, but I've always liked a lot of his policies. I love his selection of judges. I'm not going to apologize about that. This conservative majority in the Supreme Court, I am a huge fan. Maybe you're not. Okay, we'll agree to disagree. When it comes to economic policies, drilling domestically, making sure that we don't depend on foreign oil and have countries sort of hold us hostage as it pertains to petroleum. I don't know about you. I could care less about the platypus and beavers up in the Alaskan, refuge, whatever, as long as I'm paying less to heat my home and less to, sort of fill up my car. Now, again, we can agree to disagree on all this stuff. But when it comes to social issues, again, we're going to disagree immensely on this. But we both know, Joan, and you've been, again, part of the system long enough to know that a lot of this is just to sort of fire up his base and get conservatives going. We both know that the President of the United States does not have the power to do what he's claiming. We all know that the Department of Education in Washington, D.C. is how, and really the body that, helps to appropriate school funding for them. And of course, here in Trenton, in New Jersey, the DOE does that as well. So the idea that, again, and this is all you're doing, is sort of cherry picking and nitpicking certain statements because, again, you want to get sort of like left-wing voters riled up here. We both know, Joan, again, that when it comes to this, yes, when he's making references to pink-haired communists, yes, are there some weird-ass looking teachers in school districts, not just in New Jersey, but throughout the country? Yeah, sure. Check out Libs of TikTok on Twitter and all of the videos that are posted there by students and parents objecting to teachers in the classroom and sometimes being very inappropriate with their rhetoric and or their lesson plans, okay? And you also sort of mentioned the idea about school board meetings. Well, why are you against parents going to school board meetings? Parents pay property taxes, don't they? Vis-a-vis, and you should know this as a former legislator, property taxes is what funds school districts. So if anybody has the right to object to what's being done in our school districts and how the school budget is appropriated and what's being taught and what's being funded, it's parents. So the idea, or at least you're leading me to believe and any other reader, that you don't like parents objecting at school board meetings. Would you just prefer they go business as usual and parents not object to anything? Joan, again, you're being extremely disingenuous here. You're a former legislator. If anything, you should understand the importance about checks and balances. This is probably the most simplistic way to look at checks and balances, and that's making sure that parents get involved. So I don't know exactly what your objection is here. Again, or sort of talking about, maybe the former president objects to teaching, critical race theory. Now, again, we all know that's a curriculum that's taught on college campuses, specifically in law schools. But again, as someone who works in education and has worked in academia as well, all it takes is, maybe embellishing a little bit in a syllabus, calling it something else, and it's the same premise. It's just simply window dressing, Joan. You should know this. Okay, you work at the North Hudson Community Action Corporation. You work with teachers. You're familiar with teachers. You're familiar with working with everyone that probably is in the educational system. So the idea that you don't think teachers maybe window dress syllabus or lesson plans or content in the classroom, you're not stupid, Joan. You're a lot of things, you're not stupid. Okay? So we both know that, again, whether or not you're dog whistling here, whether or not you're, I don't know, taking up this moralistic crusade for the left in Hudson County. No one's buying it, Joan. And again, when it comes to what happens in our school budgets, again, it's appropriate by state. What happens in Florida with exceptional governors like Ron DeSantis, who, by the way, got COVID, right, which I think you'll never put that in writing, okay, or Greg Abbott, another great governor in the freedom-loving state of Texas that also got COVID, right? Well, yeah, but as it pertains to governors like here in New Jersey, like the Emperor, who got it wrong on COVID, or Andrew Cuomo in New York, or Neil Lamont in Connecticut, or I forgot who the Pennsylvania governor is, but you get the picture here. All the blue governors got it wrong on COVID, and that had an undue effect on education. Joan, are you going to write one editorial, at least one? Can you do me a favor? Write one editorial coming down on Governor Murphy and the far left in the legislature, or even the Department of Health, that we all know. We're going to learn soon in this new report by this commission in Trenton about how Governor Murphy got his COVID responses wrong. Again, are you willing to go to bat and say, hey, let me be intellectually honest and say that Governor Murphy got it wrong on COVID? Are you going to do that? Again, you're very vocal about education and what should go into kids' education. Well, how about going into how damaging and how hurtful it was that the governor took, once again, a one-size-fits-all approach to COVID, as opposed to what worked, and it's been proven, what Governor DeSantis did in Florida and what Governor Abbott did, a regional approach to COVID. That worked. It didn't hinder learning the way it hindered learning in New Jersey. Don't you care about kids, Joan? It seems like you do in this editorial, but do me a favor. Be consistent about it. Either care about kids altogether or don't care about them at all. Don't cherry pick when you want to care about children and their education, because guess what? The undue impact of bad COVID policies was also hurtful to our kids. Go on record and say that as well. I got a feeling, though, Joan, the little Democrat, won't do that when it comes to people in Trenton. And that's what I'm thinking about right now. And now to some local news for your consideration. And let's go with the town of West New York, my hometown. Proud Memorial Tiger, always will be. And certainly want to thank John Hines with his reporting on this story. Now, apparently, due to citing a desire to help his native homeland of Cuba, former mayor and current pain specialist, Dr. Felix Roque, has decided to withdraw from the West New York mayoral race. Now, the former mayor cited a desire to go help his homeland, and subsequently, he'll be withdrawing from the race only 1 month after announcing his candidacy. Made an announcement earlier this week, quote, "It is with a heavy heart that I announce my withdrawal from the upcoming municipal election for the position of the mayor of the town of West New York. As a doctor and a retired U.S. Army officer, I have always been passionate about serving my country and helping people. This, coupled with my deep desire to bring freedom to the Cuban people, has led me to the difficult decision to refocus my efforts. Although I believe that I have made a positive impact as your mayor, I have come to the realization that there are far better ways for me to use my talents and abilities. Therefore, I've decided to pursue my dreams of helping the people of my community and my country of Cuba in different ways." Certainly, if you remember, Felix Roque was mayor between 2011 and 2019, and he formally kicked off his candidacy at an event at Las Palmas in early January, where he also unveiled two running mates, former PBA president Tommy Mannion and real estate professional Carmen Baez. He would later unveil current police officer Elvis Alvarez as his fourth running mate, but never did announce a fifth running mate to complete the ticket itself. He also wanted to say in a statement this week, growing up in a communist nation, the only thing I've never had to do was give up my dreams. I'm grateful to be living in a country where impossible dreams can come true, and I plan to work towards making that a reality for the people of Cuba. Now, I know Felix Roque personally, and I know that certainly what goes on in his homeland pains him, as it pains my mother, my aunt, and certainly it pained my two grandparents, God rest their souls, who left communism in the late 1960s with nothing more than a briefcase and a suitcase collectively to come here and make a better life for themselves. So I'm always going to be grateful to them and, of course, my mother and my aunt collectively. Now, what Felix Roque means by that statement and what he intends to do, I don't know. I mean, it's sort of a very broad statement. And I'm not trying to make fun of it because, when you read it, it makes you think, well, what's Roque going to do? Is he just going to go and try to overthrow the government? No, of course not. It certainly means, I would say, that Dr. Roque is looking to go over there and be hopefully insightful and instructive and certainly be as helpful as he possibly can. For anyone that's ever heard of Doctors Without Borders, for example, I know that's a program, a nonprofit, that Dr. Felix Roque has participated in. So is he looking to go overseas and help provide medical care for people that are starving, malnourished, or not receiving maybe the proper nutrition? Well, listen, start no better place than Cuba. yes, while communists and left-wingers and progressives always, hail the Caribbean island as, oh my God, the model of healthcare anywhere in the world. Well, yes, folks, education sucks there. Quality of life sucks there. You're living in a police state, quite frankly, with no freedom of the press, no freedom of the religion, no freedom of speech, and quite frankly, anything and everything could ultimately get you incarcerated. So yes, it is probably the least freedom-loving democratic country on the planet next to China and North Korea, as well as Venezuela. Now, what Dr. Roque plans to do there, I don't know, but this certainly throws a wrench, though, folks, as to the upcoming mayoral election. I think a lot of us felt that with Felix Roque in the race, he might take some votes away from Albio Sires, which, again, certainly would be a concern for the Sires camp. Not necessarily taking votes away from Cosmo Cirillo, but probably more because of, the Roque vote would be more of an anti-Albio vote than anti-Cosmo vote. That's no longer the case. And now, obviously, Albio Sires and Cosmo Cirillo will face off coming up on May the 9th. We all know they've been going to events. They've been very active on social media. They've been very visible at Democratic events all throughout Hudson County, campaign kickoffs for other elected officials, wherever it may be, whether it be in North Bergen. I'm sure subsequently, as the next few months materialize, city council races in Hoboken are going to be sort of the big hot topic in Hudson County as well, shortly after the municipal elections in May. Without a doubt, both Cirillo and Sires collectively are going to be going to events, shaking hands, as they say, kissing babies, taking photo ops, taking selfies, and making sure that they get the vote out and get turnout for their respective campaigns. I think we both know what Albio stands for. I think we both know what Cosmo stands for. It remains to be seen where people are leaning. Ladies and gentlemen, we've talked about it before, and we'll talk about it extensively again for the remainder of this sort of election season leading up to May the 9th, as, seniors, many parents, many teachers possibly who still live in town will certainly support Cosmo Cirillo, while Albio Sires has the support overwhelmingly of the Hudson County Democratic Organization. Every mayor, every elected official, every commissioner, even the Hudson County Sheriff, Francis Galari, certainly is in Albio Sires' corner. It's not a bad thing. Those are just the reality, folks, and those are the optics, and that's really the math that Cosmo has to overcome. And we've talked about this at length here on this show, and I'll continue breaking it down. Certainly we know Albio, at the top of his ticket, is a big name. He's a former U.S. representative, former Speaker of the Assembly. Again, he has been entrenched in New Jersey politics, and more specifically Hudson County politics, for decades. He is a name that it's hard not to know who Albio Sires is. The rest of his ticket certainly is comprised of many worthwhile candidates. Again, we certainly have the current commissioner running with him, as well as new upcoming candidates. Now, as it pertains to Cosmo, yes, he has current state assemblywoman Angelica Jimenez on the ticket, current commissioner Margarita Guzman, as well as the other candidates on his ticket as well. Folks, we all know how it works in commissioner elections, top 5 vote getters. We all know that Albio is going to get across the finish line. We know that Cosmo is going to get across the finish line. The key element here is, who are they going to bring with them? And realistically, again, it remains to be seen what both men can do. I think the rest of their tickets are strong. They're all viable, very good people. Not a bad word to say about any of them, so don't get it twisted if you're thinking that I'm going to be negative here. No, I'm not. But I'm going to be a realist here. I'm going to be a realist as it pertains to the math. Whether it's turnout down by the waterfront, whether it's on Burger Line Avenue, Boulevard East, or even going far out as, Kennedy Boulevard. There's a lot of different sectors in West New York, folks. Not necessarily factions, but parts of the township itself that have their own sort of voting block, their own sort of electorate, their own sort of issues that matter to them. What matters to people living right on the waterfront by Son Cubano and Riverwalk Place, the luxury condos there, is very different than people who live on Hudson Avenue, right by, coincidentally, Albio Sires Elementary School, right on Palisade Avenue. Those concerns of those individuals certainly are different than the ones that live by the housing unit right off of Adams Street, more uptown, and certainly going towards Kennedy Boulevard. Again, who's going to come out, who's going to support who, remains to be seen. But I will say this, though, and I think that with Roque being out, again, it certainly makes the classical matchup one-on-one. It doesn't make it a triple threat for all of you pro wrestling fans, that reference. Okay, but a one-on-one battle, I think, is something we've all been waiting for. It's going to really put to test, again, the strength of the Hudson County Democratic Organization, and certainly a grassroots campaign, which is what Cosmo Cirillo represents. Whether or not it materializes on May the 9th, as it pertains to turnout and support, it remains to be seen. Has it been civil thus far? Absolutely. I'm a little surprised at that. I think in an election that's going to be as hotly contested as this one, without a doubt, I was expecting some fickleness, some tension, some hostility. Were we expecting anything like 2011? Certainly not. I mean, that was an election, and a campaign for the ages and social media content that I think is forever iconic. We're not going to see that during this election, folks, but I think we're going to see both tickets get a little testy in the weeks and months ahead. Let's move south to Jersey City, and a special thank you to Jeff Henning from Hudson TV for his report on the story. And kudos to Jersey City Mayor Stephen Fulop and Chief Prosecutor Jake Hudson for starting up a task force to target and enforce animal cruelty criminality. Now, certainly the mayor announced the launch of the Jersey City Animal Cruelty Tip Line for the public to anonymously report animal abuse, neglect, and abandonment concerns to the Jersey City Police Department in conjunction, of course, in partnership with the Municipal Prosecutor's Office. Now, taking the city's efforts to enforce animal abuse laws a step further, 38 police officers have been certified as Municipal Humane Law Enforcement Officers, MHLEOs, with 20 additional JCPD supervisors starting the specialized training as soon as next month. Mayor went on to say this week, quote, "Any violence on animals is deplorable, and it is important to do all that we can to help these defenseless animals and stop such abuse. This tip line will provide a safe, anonymous service for people to use under the circumstances where they may not feel otherwise comfortable alerting the cops out of fear that the aggressors could indeed turn on them. As of 2019, New Jersey law does indeed require that only one MHLEO police officer per municipality. That doesn't really make sense, especially in a city like Jersey City. We should want more, so kudos to Mayor Fulop for doing that. However, though, the JCPD and the Prosecutor's Office work to enhance the training and enforcement of all animal welfare and animal cruelty laws, utilizing what's called a Dog Trust USA grant provided by the Jersey City's Health and Human Services Department, the HHS. Now, Jersey City PD Deputy Chief Nick Floor explored the idea of establishing a tip line to report animal-related crimes after 20-plus years of service. Now, it has been proven that research indicates that there are direct correlations between animal abuse and domestic violence. Folks, I think we've all seen that. If you're willing to abuse an animal, what's to stop you from abusing a human being? I mean, there's really no difference there on our buffer zone. I think anyone who we've ever seen engaging in one or the other is probably going to be prone to the other, of course. Now, quote, "Under this administration, the Jersey Police Department has worked to be more strategic in our efforts to combat all crime, from the worst offenders to those who commit acts of violence on helpless animals. By training our officers and providing a tip line for suspected crimes, we can better enforce the law and simultaneously help keep animals safe." Folks, great job by Mayor Stephen Fulop and certainly by Chief Municipal Prosecutor Jake Hudson. Now, let me just be very clear here, because I think I've made it also very apparent on my social media. I'm not a fan of animals. I don't really care for dogs or cats. It's never been my thing. It's just an added responsibility and an added expense that I don't care to incur. But I understand that for many of us out there, having a pet is nurturing, it's overwhelming, it's fulfilling, it helps fill a lot of holes in our lives, and I get that. Some are, therapy animals, some are just, again, cuddly companions that make our days go by quicker and a lot smoother. I get it's not for me. I've never really cared for having a dog or a cat. It's just something expensive I don't care for. But I understand why people are such devoted pet owners and pet lovers. Having said that, under no circumstances would I ever advocate for any animal cruelty. That's just wrong, folks. I get it. You may not like dogs. You may not like, pet owners walking their dogs on their sidewalk, maybe not picking up after them, maybe, the smell of cat feces and how annoying that is. I get all that, folks. Trust me, I get annoyed on my block all the time. But I would never think of harming an animal. I mean, that's just, folks, you have to be wired wrong, okay? There has to be something wrong with you. I mean, if anything, that's just sort of maybe the initial stages of deep socio and psychopathic behaviors, as we've all seen, right? Again, I'm not trying to be a criminologist here, but if you do any sort of research, you'll know that every serial killer eventually at some point started off by, guess what? Abusing animals. So shout out to Mayor Stephen Fulop for increasing the amount of municipal officers to address a serious problem. I mean, Jersey City is a big city, okay? Certainly pet owners on the west side in Communipaw, Greenville, the Heights, downtown, wherever, obviously all share a love for animals and, of course, want to make sure that no animals are harmed. So good job by Jake, good job by Steve in making sure that animals, again, have a very comfortable and a very sort of violence-free life in Jersey City. Lastly, let's stay in sort of northern Hudson County, and once again, a great job by Jeff Henning with Hudson TV for his report on this story, and what a wonderful job by State Senator Brian Stack, and certainly the soon-to-be State Senator in LD 32, Raj Mukherjee, for partnering together on what I think, again, as a former employee in the criminal justice system and ultimately having graduate degrees in criminal justice, this is music to my ears in establishing partnership and programs for pretrial intervention. Now, certainly both state senators, in an effort to sort of uphold the fair and just execution of what they call a just criminal justice system in New Jersey, again, State Senator Brian Stack and current Assemblyman, soon to be State Senator Raj McCarthy, introduced legislation in Trenton to establish the, quote, pretrial partnership for community support and services pilot program in both Monmouth and Union counties, with the potential to be extended statewide. I think, as we all know, folks, Monmouth County with a serious opioid epidemic there, as well as high crime rates in Union County, I think serves to be the perfect testing grounds for a program like this. Now, the pre-entry pilot program, essentially set as a condition of release by the court, would allow eligible defendants to receive biopsychosocial assessments and responsive treatment services, including addiction and mental health services, prior to trial. Successful participation in the program may be taken into consideration to reduce a sentence or ultimately dismiss a prosecution. State Senator Stack said this week, quote, the primary goal of the criminal justice system is not to punish, but to rehabilitate, and he's right on that. In order to achieve this goal, people must have access to support services throughout the duration of their time within the system, which begins at the time of arrest. Subsequently, State Senator Brian Stack is the chairman of the State Senate Judiciary Committee. He also wanted to say, quote, this pre-entry program would offer defendants services and treatments which will ultimately improve their court appearance rates and ultimately enhance public safety. Also, under the bill, eligible defendants would receive support services provided by and coordinated through an approved pre-entry community support provider. To be approved, the providers must be nonprofit or for-profit organizations that have provided comprehensive reentry services within the state or at least 2 years prior to the implementation of the program. Bravo to State Senator Brian Stack and certainly to Assemblyman soon-to-be State Senator Raj McCarthy, because, folks, again, the key is to reduce recidivism. It's something I learned early on during my undergraduate years at Rutgers University in New Brunswick and certainly in graduate school at Rutgers in Newark at the School of Criminal Justice. We want to reduce recidivism. Yes, there's an element of incarceration that's about punishment, and that should be punitive for serious offenders. But for those that are not serious offenders, the importance is to rehabilitate and to make them responsible members of society. It's to make sure that they're productive, that they don't end up back in jail, that they don't end up back on drugs, that they don't end up, with a gambling addiction, substance addiction, maybe, prone to domestic violence, getting the help that they need. These are the people, folks, that programs like this are geared towards. So I can't say enough, again, as someone who has studied criminal justice, who worked 10 years in the criminal justice system, I cannot applaud this partnership enough by State Senator Stack and, of course, Assemblyman and soon-to-be State Senator McCarthy for partnering together and raising awareness about something that ultimately, in the long run, is going to benefit New Jerseyans all across 21 counties within the Garden State. And that's our show for this week. Once again, I want to thank, obviously, all of the great journalism here, reporting, obviously, all the local news sites for their exceptional work and certainly helping make my job easier in giving commentary and, of course, continue to bring you the award-winning brand of opinion journalism I continue to bring you every single week. And certainly, of course, folks, I want to thank the Hudson Media Group, the leader in independent media here in Hudson County, for continuing to partner with me in bringing you Talking Politics every single week here via, once again, the Hudson Media Group. Check out all of their wonderful content by going to their websites, www.hmgtvshows.com, as well as www.livestream.com/hmgtv. Don't forget to subscribe to the Hudson Media Group on YouTube and make sure you like them on Facebook, as well as follow them on Instagram and Twitter. Check out brand new episodes of the 7-time award-winning podcast, Talking the Hudson, by going to blogtalkradio.com/talkingthehudson. Recent guests have included North Bergen mayoral candidate Larry Weinstein, Al Sullivan from, obviously Tap Into Jersey City, and Jersey City Councilwoman Mira Prince Array. All episodes are there, available to download anywhere, anytime from any PC, Mac, smartphone, or tablet. Make sure you follow the show on Instagram at Talking Politics with Fernando Uribe, and follow me on both Instagram and Twitter personally at The Fernando Zone. And always remember, ladies and gentlemen, if it's unbiased, unfiltered, and unafraid, it's always Talking Politics right here with the Hudson Media Group. I am New Jersey's premier award-winning journalist, top 100 Latino, and certainly the people's choice and the people's voice. Fernando Uribe saying so long, and thank you so much for watching.